Hello, and welcome back to my channel. Now, after doing the test I did, well, there isn't really a difference, so I don't have to worry about when I'll upload. So, there's that. Now, today, I want to talk about one of God's most... this is a religious video. That's your warning. I'm here because I want to talk about one of God's most down to do whatever God says in a moment's notice. And by that, I'm talking about Abraham. Was it Abraham? I don't know if Abraham was what his name was changed to, or what his name was, and then God was like, no, your name is no longer Abraham. You are now... So, for those who don't know who Abraham is, right? I'll summarize his story and then I'll talk about him. According to legend, Abraham was the one that saved his distant cousin, or family, who lived in the city of sin. Now, for those who don't know the city of sin, which is something I really want to talk about, which I'll leave for like another day to like fully talk about, because I mentioned it once and I'll mention it again. For those who don't know who the city of sin was, what the city of sin was basically a city so sinful that God basically decided, alright, it's time for y'all to leave. And, of course, Abraham was trying to stop him because one of his family members lived there. So, Abraham was the one, maybe you'll recognize this. He was praying to God, and he was like, Lord, would you destroy the city of sin if there were 50 righteous people? And God said, no. No, I will not destroy the city if there's 50 righteous people. And then Abraham was like, okay, what about 40? And it kept going and going and going until Abraham was like, would you destroy the city of sin if there was at least one righteous person? And God said, no, I will not destroy the city of sin if there's one righteous person. The reason I'm using my hand, by the way, is because, you know, his voice comes from above, from the clouds. So there's that. And, of course, God sends some angels to be like, okay, Abraham made a really good point, and he's one of my most loyal followers. So, you're going to go into the city of sin, and you're going to see if there's anyone righteous there. The angel went down. I think there was 2 angels or 1. I don't know. And they got into town, and basically immediately the townspeople were immediately going rabid, were foaming at the mouth, and they were basically saying all these things that aren't really appropriate for YouTube. And Abraham's family member was like, leave them alone, have my daughters instead. Which, okay, I understand that you're trying to be nice to the strangers, but at the same time, why would you offer them your daughters? Like, that's still bad. But, again, but of course, the people were too focused on the angel's human body to care about the daughters, which means that the angels looked so... in a human form, they looked so attractive. would be the word, were, yeah, attractive. Which is why all the people started swarming them in. And of course, Abraham's family member, I don't know his name, was like, okay. And locks himself in his house, I think. If I don't know. I take everything I say with a grain of salt. He leads the angels to his home. The angels show their true form. And they're like, for showing us kindness, you and your family will leave this city, so that way you will not go down with the sinners. And then they start running away from the city. And then the angels like, do not look back towards the city of sin. And then the wife of Abraham's, I'm just going to say brother. He's probably not his brother, but I'm assume. Or cousin. The wife of Abraham's cousin looked back at the city of sin because like, oh, my home. And then she turned into stone or something like that. That's basically the whole entire story, summarized. There's other stuff, but that push it aside. I'm here to talk about Abraham and Abraham only. So, Abraham is a very interesting case to me because he is one of the only people in the Bible who obeyed God at his every word, from what I remember. Because with Moses, he did it once, and that was when he was like, when God was like, okay, your people want water, ask the rock to produce water. And Moses was like, batter. It was like, tap it, but instead he hit it. So yeah, with others, like for an example, Solomon, he started to prioritize his wisdom over God, which, yeah, and others, and so on and so forth. Abraham, at least from my knowledge, it's been a while, was the only, like, person that, no, other than Job, Abraham was, like, the only other person that was like, okay, bet. Because the difference between Job and Abraham is Job went to extreme pain and grief, but he still chose to have faith in God, and he still chose to believe in him, and he never once, he never blamed God for it. He never, I don't know what the word for it is, but there's a word for it. Unlike with Abraham, who's like, oh, what's that? Oh, you want me to sacrifice my son? Hey, I got you, big dog. Because this is where I get to talking about Abraham. This guy was so devoted to God. When he heard God from the heavens say, hey, sacrifice your son to me, he does not hesitate. He immediately is like, okay, hey son, what? We're gonna go hiking. To where? To the sacrifice mountain. But if we go up to the sacrifice mountain without a sacrifice, isn't that a bad thing? Don't worry about that. Don't worry about that, champ. Alright. And then they make their way up the mountain. It's like, okay. Son, did I ever tell you that I love you? Yeah. And then God interrupts. He's like, I was testing you, Abraham. Here's a lamb. And he spawns a lamb in. So that way they can sacrifice the lamb to the sacrifice mountain. So that way it isn't like, it isn't like Was it offending God for going up there without a sacrifice? If this guy was ready to kill his own son at a moment's notice, if God hadn't intervened, because I find that like I find it shocking, right? Because it's like I was testing you, and then Abraham's like, did I pass? With flying colors. He scares me. Because you gotta understand, right? To be that devoted and without hesitation at all just surprises me. Abraham was the GOAT, but not the GOAT. That title will always belong to God. Anyway, so not only that, he later goes on to have his son, who he almost sacrificed to his to the mountain, whose name was Joshua, I believe. It's been a while, okay? Forgive me, alright? And he eventually had 2 other sons. That's a whole other story. Or was it 7? I can't remember. Yeah, no. Joshua eventually had 2 sons, then blah, 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 blah. Then one of those sons had 7 sons. Then one of those sons seemed to be a prophet, so on and so forth. That's the story for another time. That is if I'm interested at all in talking about it. So, which makes me question, right? Where did Abraham end up? Because we know he dies, right? We know he dies, and we know he is 100% in heaven. Let's be honest. The guy was willing to do anything God told him. So my question is, right? Is he considered, what is it, a saint or an archangel? Probably not an archangel, but like a saint. Also, that's something I really want to talk about, are the archangels. But there's a lot of things I want to talk about, like Moses, the archangels, the 12 disciples, all that kind of stuff. But I can't remember what to talk about, so, do one at a time. Do one at a time. Which makes me question, right? If Abraham was willing to follow any and all commands given to him by God, would he have a higher rank in heaven, or would he have more of a trusting kind of, I don't know how it works up there in heaven. I don't know. There could be a ranking system for all I know. I don't know. No one knows until you die. Then you know, but you can't really share that information until you come back from the dead, now can't you? And well, you can't really do that. Only God can. So. Anywho, with Abraham, right, I find him very interesting. Because not only one, is his whole entire family lineage come back from, I think, Noah, if I, my brain. If I remember correctly, Abraham is a descendant of Noah, I believe. Or it's the other way around. I don't know. Which means I could have this wrong. I could totally have this wrong. Is Abraham is a part of the lineage, the promise that I think, that God made to Noah, which basically was like, you all have as many descendants as stars in the sky, right? And I wonder if Abraham's a part of that, and if he's somehow in some way related to Jesus, right? Because that's a whole different kind of worms of like, because we all know that Jesus does originate from a lineage. He originates from a lineage, but not a lot of people know where he comes from. We can only guesstimate. For all we know, he could be one of Noah's descendants. For all we know, he could be one of I really don't know what else. Or he could be his own separate thing. Not the point. Not the point, right? So, or was that promise made to Abraham? You see, I just despise the fact that I cannot remember a single thing I have learned. All that aside, I really find Abraham's story to be really cool and really great and funny, especially about the fact that he was willing to sacrifice his own kid without hesitation. He was down from the very start. He was down. I'm starting to think that he's been thinking about doing that for months. He's like, I gotta find a way to get rid of this kid. And God just immediately comes out of nowhere. It's like, hey, can you sacrifice your kid to me? And then he looks at him. It's like, finally, a reason. Because without hesitation, I find that surprising. Like, I would get it if he had some hesitation, but still ended up being like, okay, well, I gotta go through with it, so. But no hesitation whatsoever. Not before the climb, not during the climb, not after the climb. I just find that so interesting. And that's it for Abraham. A lot of questions. I'm just here to talk about what I find really interesting and teach you some stories of the Bible you've never heard, or get you to ask these questions, because it's important to ask yourself these questions when it comes to like being religious, right? Not because it's a part of being religious. It's just when it comes to someone like me who's very curious, it helps me like be more attached and be more I wouldn't say attached, but more interested into it. And also, it's just great to ask questions every once in a while, even though you may not be able to answer them. Know this: one day they will be answered. How they will be answered, though, no one knows. But yeah, I hope y'all enjoyed. On the next religious video, I'll be talking about Moses next, who again I find really interesting, like Abraham. And I'll see y'all when I'm done hibernating. Have a wonderful evening, afternoon, morning, good night. Peace.